Sea Fever is a brand new 2020 horror flick that was released to VOD, I don't know, I think last week, Friday is when it was released. I watched this like 4 or 5 days ago, right before my kids got here, and I meant to review it the entire time, and they just never let me. So this is, not as fresh in my mind as I would have liked to have talked about it. But this is about a group of people who go out on a boat and they get out in the middle of the ocean and something latches onto their ship and they can't move and they go to investigate what this thing is. One of them is a scientist and she starts to realize that what is attached to them is bad news. I always give really vague plot synopses because I just like going in blind, and I feel like if you just get a very basic feel, like it's a sea horror flick monster movie that reminds me of something like I guess Alien has been thrown around a little bit. Now this movie is no Alien, let me tell you. But I do understand that it's confined spaces. There's something on board that they don't understand, and you've got a female protagonist that's trying to warn everybody. So I get the Alien comparisons for sure. But as I said, this is no Alien. This is a film that I was actually pretty into when it started, just because of the character development, the setup, and I was like, all right, like this feels like a well-made movie. The acting is solid. Production value is pretty good here. I can't wait to see. And then once this started with the creature, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder where this is gonna head. But once it started getting into the later half of the movie, I found myself losing interest because I just didn't feel like the film had a lot going on towards the end. Like, how films build and they build and they build, and then you have the big climax, the big last hurrah, the last like 15 minutes that goes nuts. I felt like the film built and built and then just kind of started to slowly descend and get less and less interesting, and I cared less and less about what was going on. And that's a shame, because I did find myself very involved in the beginning, and was like, all right, I'm really looking forward to seeing where this heads. And when it finally got to where it was going, I just found myself disinterested. And honestly, it's not that I hated it, but I did look forward to it being over. Once I was about an hour 10 in, I was just at that point in the movie where the characters were reacting to things, and by that point I had kind of checked out. I'd kind of lost interest. I'm not really honestly sure where the film lost me. I couldn't pinpoint it, and that's why I said I would have rather this film been a little more fresh in my mind, because I've watched probably 15 things since. But that doesn't change my overall opinion. Like, that all still stands. I know how I felt during the movie. And of course, it's a spoiler-free thing anyway, so it's not like I could even tell you what that pinpointed thing is. I'm just saying that if I was to talk to you about it in the comments or whatnot, maybe you guys could tell me like where you lost it, and then I'd be like, oh shit, that's right. That's where it just felt like the characters were making, I don't want to, not silly decisions, but they were having silly reactions to things. And I guess when that happens for me, I start to mentally check out, because I have to be connected to the characters in a realistic way. Like, as I've said a million times, my movies that really grab me for the most part, no matter how fantastical the situation is, I don't care if it's the most fantasy driven thing possible, something so outside of the realm of reality that I've never ever will see and can't see, ridiculous fantasy. Humans are humans. Characters always have to remain grounded in a reality. They have to have natural reactions to things that make me buy into that. And if I am not buying into the character's reactions to these unnatural things, even if I can't tell you with a high degree of certainty if anyone would react that way because these are things that are impossible and never would happen, I still have to buy that that's the way they would react. And that's where I think that a lot of movies can differ for people, is because of how they feel like people will react to these ridiculous situations. And they're like, oh, that's not the way they'd react. When, of course, we don't know how they'd react at all because A, we're not them, and because B, these are ridiculous fantasy scenarios that will never happen. That all being said, it's still how we view it. And in this movie, as well as many, many others, one of the biggest reasons that I fall out of films is because I become disinterested in the characters, because the characters aren't realistic despite the unrealistic setting. And I think this is just yet another example of that, though I do not have that pinpointed moment. Pinpointed, is that, yeah, that would work. Pinpointed moment where I could point to that and be like, oh, okay, that's the moment where they lost me. That's the decision that made me go, this character's not real. I can't take that character anymore. You know? It's just, I think it gradually happens. Sometimes it really like hits you like a ton of bricks and you're like, what? That would never, come on, that would never happen. That person would never do that. But other films, and I think this is one of them, where it's just like a subtle thing, where it just slowly kind of happens and there's like characters making just slightly off decisions and reactions, and it just keeps happening, and then just little by little your attention span starts to wane. And you're like, And also the story can just become less interesting. The way that they set this up, I was like, oh man, this is gonna go somewhere. This creature is gonna be crazy. We're gonna get so much from it. And this might be a budgetary thing. This might be because they didn't have anything to go off of here. But at the end of the day, you get what you get. And if you like it, you like it, so on and so forth. It's not a movie I disliked, and a buddy of mine really enjoyed it. So, I can't say this is across the board something somebody, like everybody's going to hate. But for me personally, I just found myself disengaged by the end. And with the film building the way it was, it should have had me all the way. Even if the ending ended up being something that I was in disagreement with, it should have still built strongly enough to that ending that I wasn't into. You know what I mean? And it was like this arc. And it just, like, around the halfway point, it just started to descend for me. And not because the movie was ever bad. Like, I never felt during the movie like, oh, this is stupid. Like, oh, I hate it. Like, what in the hell are they doing? This is such a stupid decision. It just lost steam. And I was like, nah, yeah, okay. Is this over yet? Anyway, so Sea Fever, not something I was super into, obviously. And I'll, of course, as always, I know I said this at the end of every one of my reviews because, like Stephen King, I have no idea how to end my shit here. But I do look forward to the comments because I am curious on how people are receiving this film. But let me know. Adios.